Hey, I got a great question today from a viewer about which meals to use HCL with, and it helped me understand that I really need to make a video talking about who should or should not be using HCL when consuming carbohydrates. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So it was over on our video for increased mucus with betaine HCL use that user asbestos flake something or other said, hey, ACV and HCL seem to be helping my burping, which is helping my reflux, even hours later at bedtime, etc. I take 2 ACV pills at breakfast and dinner, which are carb meals, and I take 5 HCL pills with lunch, which is my protein meal. How long should I be doing this for? Forever? Should I divide my protein between the 3 meals and take 5 HCL at each meal to really get my stomach emptying better and my LES tighter? So this is a good question, and I don't know asbestos flake or what situation is going on with them, so I'm not giving them any direct advice, but these are some topics that we can talk about in general a little bit. And the first thing we want to say is that keep in mind that apple cider vinegar is not going to acidify the way that HCL will. HCL is much more acidifying and much more effective, and I usually just use apple cider vinegar with a client if they just need a little bit of a boost and that's all they really need. That can be enough for some people. And the actual apple cider vinegar liquid is usually going to be a lot more effective than using a capsule for some reason. And, just think about, talking about having reflux here. And if somebody has reflux where their esophagus is really inflamed, then putting apple cider vinegar down their throat is probably going to burn a lot if that esophagus is already really inflamed. So they might have to use capsules if they really want to use apple cider vinegar. But yeah, the HCL is always going to be much more effective, especially if someone's having reflux and they really need to acidify that stomach correctly so that they can trigger that lower esophageal sphincter at the bottom of the esophagus to close so that we don't get this acid stuff coming back up. It's usually not enough acid in there, and so that valve is not being triggered correctly, so the small amount of acid that's in there is coming back up and burning them. But asbestos flake says that they're just having the HCL with lunch. That's when they have protein and they have carbohydrates with the other meals, should they split up the protein. And, we really like to see our clients have protein at every meal. Protein is kind of like the slow burning log on the fire that can sustain a person a little bit longer, where if someone's just eating carbohydrates in a meal, that's kind of just going to be like kindling, and they're going to kind of rip through that too quickly, and they have a greater chance of creating spikes and crashes in blood sugar. We like to have protein at every meal so that it's a one step that can just help keep that blood sugar on a more even keel, because there's a lot of trouble that can come on with spikes and crashes in blood sugar. So I'm always a fan of seeing somebody make a change that would put protein in each meal. And when they say, should I split my protein up? I don't know if there's a reason they're only wanting to eat a specific amount of protein or not. But we like to see somebody eat a substantial amount of protein in each meal, an at least legitimate serving and not just a bit. But if somebody is supplementing with betaine HCL to acidify their stomach, they may need to think about that the dose might need to be according to the level of protein they're consuming, where if they just had a meal or a snack or something that just had a little bit of protein in it, they may not need as much HCL with that meal. But setting your meals up so that you can use HCL at each meal is the optimal way to help really acidify that stomach and correct an acid reflux situation, especially if a person has some type of overgrowth of bacteria in the stomach that's kind of creating all these gases and creating more pressure and pushing things up. Increasing that HCL can make that environment less hospitable. Most people are going to need to take other steps to reduce that bacterial overgrowth. HCL alone is usually not going to correct that. So they probably want to take some steps to wipe out some of these bad guys if they feel like there's an overgrowth in the stomach. But setting up the meal so that you can acidify the stomach at each meal is really an optimal situation. And the reason I wanted to make this video is because in my books, I explain that when someone's first starting to supplement with betaine HCL and testing those things out, they should do that just with meals with no high carb foods. They should not have any kind of starch type foods. Green vegetables and stuff that have some carbohydrates are fine, but you wouldn't want to have like a potato or bread or pizza or something when you're testing out using betaine HCl. And the reason is, if a person does have bacteria in the stomach, those carbs and sugars can really activate that bacteria, which will cause them to create more gases and more pressure that's going to push things up even more aggressively. And when starting HCl, most people use a very small amount when first starting out, just to see how much their stomach might already be making. They might not need a whole lot. They might only need one capsule to really acidify the stomach. So they start off with a small amount, and when you're just adding a little bit of acid in the stomach, if it's not yet enough to really acidify that stomach and trigger that valve to close, then the small amount of acid you just added is going to come back up too. So you might increase those reflux symptoms. So we like to see people avoid that. But once somebody works up to a full dose of HCl for them, maybe 5 capsules, I'm not saying to use 5 capsules, but that's what a lot of people seem to do well with as a full dose for them, is once they work up to that, they should be able to test out using some carbohydrates in that meal too, and just make sure that it doesn't magnify or create some type of acid reflux for them. And then it's fine to use betaine HCl with carbohydrates. So I don't know if this person was avoiding HCl with these meals with just carbohydrates because my book said don't start off like that. That confuses some people sometimes, I think. But it's okay to use betaine HCl with carbohydrates in your meals. You just don't want to do that the first time you use HCl, because you want to see, do I have a reflux issue that maybe I didn't even know about? Because if I don't have any stomach acid, I could have been having reflux, but I wouldn't know because I wouldn't feel it, because no acid was coming back up to burn them. So if they put a small amount of acid in there, you want to do whatever you can to minimize the odds of that acid coming back up. And if you have a bacterial overgrowth, consuming carbohydrates with that meal really accelerates the chances of that coming back up and burning them. So we just like people to test it out without carbs, and then once everything is going okay, they should be able to include carbohydrates with those meals. So I hope that helps. And if you feel like you might be dealing with some type of bacterial overgrowth in the stomach, which is really common if somebody has reflux, because when there's not enough stomach acid, the bacteria can come in and set up camp and kind of take over a little bit. So it's really common to see when someone has low stomach acid or some type of acid reflux going on, to see this bacterial overgrowth issue going on. So if you want to understand how you can take steps to reduce that overgrowth, you can jump over right now and check out our video on steps to wipe out bad bacteria in the stomach. I hope that helps.